Welcome to a new episode of the podcast. Today's deep end discussion, Palworld. Welcome to the Deep End, our captivating discussion series where we dive into the depths of the current Pokemon news and theories, and sometimes other games that are Pokemon related, like Palworld. Let's dive into it. So, at the time of recording, Palworld has hit the scene, has made a tremendous splash on Steam and on Xbox, but with it comes the controversy of a lot of the particular pals that you do encounter. And we're going to be discussing not only the controversy, but also we're going to give our takes on the game, as some of us have been playing it, as well as what we might see from the fallout of everything. So stick around. So we know that Nintendo has been making statements about how they're investigating any kind of issues with the IP in regards to Pokemon, and how some of the pals do look like amalgamations of current existing Pokemon. And so we have seen many people discussing Palworld. There's been accusations of plagiarism for utilizing some of the models, to downright theft of IP. And so it took a while, but Nintendo did issue a statement stating that they were looking into it and any of the legal issues that may occur due to the similarities of so many of the pals to existing Pokemon. But I also want to caution everybody that just because Nintendo says that they are looking into it does not mean that they are automatically guilty of. There have been people on Twitter who have looked into the character models of both Pokemon and Palworld. Someone had actually said that it looks like Pocket Pair has used some of the models as a base, but then has altered it, and by using it as a base as in referencing those same models to build their pals, the line work is a little different, the placement of character joints is a little off, and even skeletal construction of the 3D assets have slightly alterations. I do have a background in computer animation, so I know that using a reference point, you will get similar effects, but not necessarily identical effects. In this case, the person who I was speaking to on Twitter basically said that it looks like they were using references, not so much as complete copying of those models, but using them as, hey, this is how they did it, so let's try and copy that and then change it up from there to make it our own, kind of a thing. I know, Chase, you also have a background in some modeling aspects. So what is your take on that?
Draco and I did have a DM conversation about this, because I was going back and forth with someone in the Hidden Power podcast Discord, because after Palworld, and that day specifically, Lumi came in like a monster and mentioned Palworld, and then it kicked off. I actually designed Pokemon models. For one of the Pixelmon mods, we design all our own models ourselves. We don't rip Pokemon models. There have been instances where I've just designed models based on still images from the anime, the games, or whatever, and I actually went back and compared them to actual Pokemon models, and they were very similar. In fact, they were almost identical. So it is very easy to create a model that is very similar to something else. I mean, if you create a model of a snake, it's going to look very similar to the way the model of Gyarados is structured. It's just how it is, and how those two would move would be in a very similar way. So Pocket Pair have been very open that they have used Pokemon as one of their inspirations. And I mean, this game has been in development for 3 years. They've shared I won't say their whole development cycle, but they've shared a good portion of it. And in all honesty, I think that statement that Pokemon put out was actually just a corporate way of saying, listen, we know about this game, please stop emailing us, because if you're getting 1 million emails a day about a game that may or may not be infringing upon your property, you're going to tell people to stop. And I'm sure if there was an issue, they would have been looking into it already, because someone had created a Pokemon mod for Palworld, and you had to pay to gain access to this. But the day it launched, he got sent to DMCA. So the fact that Palworld has gone on for this long, I mean, even if it had just been a week, the game would have been taken down, because things would have happened very quickly. Because should this have been an issue of infringement on a copyright, it would have been an internal matter, because these are two Japanese companies that would have been at each other's throats. So I think just looking at the models themselves doesn't really tell you the full story, because again, like I said, you, without even looking at the skeletons or any part of the model, you could create something that looks similar, if not identical. Yeah, that's my standpoint. But
one of the things I do want to point out is that yes, there are PALs that have very striking similarities and amalgamations to already existing Pokemon. One of the biggest ones for me is Verdash. Verdash has a very, very distinct look of Cinderace fused with a Leafeon. I'm not even going to debate that. However, there are PALs that are like the Dire Howl. Now, the Dire Howl, people were like, well, that's Lycanroc. Well, before Lycanroc, there was Tiger from Monster Rancher, which was a PlayStation 1 game, well before Nintendo ever established the Lycanroc iconography, the look of that. And there's even PALs that look like Digimon, which is the Yormantide. I mean, it looks like a Seadramon. That's one of the first things that my friends said. And then there's, of course,
King Dedede. Sorry.
King Dedede, the Pen King. But then there's stuff that you have here, like this honestly is reminiscent of what a Kyurem looks like, which is from Asian folklore. And, people say, well, that's Lucario. Well, Lucario's based on Anubis, who's based on a jackal. They're getting inspiration from things that were inspired. And this has a much more Egyptian-style look to it than Lucario does, to be perfectly honest. Like, this looks more like what Anubis would look like, in my eyes, than Lucario.
Yeah, so that's one of my issues as well, is you can see similarities between certain PALs and certain Pokemon, which, I mean, is only natural because, I mean, they were open in a Q&A session. They did say they were inspired by Pokemon. So, I mean, that comes with the territory. But then when you look at things like Anubis and Lucario, I don't know where people are getting the logic that was then ripped from Pokemon. Because, like you said, Anubis is based on Anubis. But then also something I want to touch on really quickly is people forget that Pokemon wasn't, I won't say they weren't the first monster taming game, because I mean they probably were, but I can't remember if Monster Rancher came out before Pokemon, and I think Pokemon just brought monster taming to the big stage.
Shin Megami Tensei is actually the first one.
Oh, I forgot Shin Megami Tensei came out before Pokemon. So Pokemon was inspired by those previous games to then create Pokemon.
And also, what was it, Ultraman, I think, too, right? Didn't they have like a whole article or something about that, where like the Pokemon was based off of like the capsule things, or like Ultraman or something? I swear that was one of the things too, like, or one of the inspirations for Pokemon.
I mean, I could believe that.
Capsulemon in general.
If you ever go down to anything that's very Japanese heavy, they've got the little gacha machines where you put a coin in, turn the dial, and out comes this capsule, and inside the capsule you can get whatever that particular machine is getting. Because I've gotten stuff like puzzles out of them, 3D character puzzles that you basically build together, but they come out of a pill.
Oh yeah, those are really cool.
But like, then you've got some characters here that I don't know where they've come from, but they look cool, like Tombat, which is a bat tomcat, a vampire cat.
Tombat specifically, I could see taking in my mind that it was inspired by Gligar, but I have no idea where they got the cat part from. Although, I mean, you could look at it and say, although Gligar is based on a scorpion or whatever it is.
It is now a crab, because it gets crab ham.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, it is a crab. That was my mistake. I do apologize. What a blunder on my part. But I mean, you could say that Gligar looked kind of cat-like with its pointy ears.
But, Guren, since you're not a non-player at this point, what are your thoughts about the PALs, the controversy? Like, what do you think?
As someone who has only been like watching like very sporadically like people playing the game, I can see it, right? I can see like the similarities to some of the Pokemon that they're probably inspired off of or like based off of. Is that not like just normal? Coming from me, or like in my opinion, it's kind of like it's basically like if like people were to make fan arts or their own interpretations of a Pokemon in general, right? Because like it doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, sure. The PALs look like the actual Pokemon themselves, and I can see where there'd be problems. But like a lot of these just seem like a different interpretation of something. I'm not all good with all this legal stuff because like to me it's just like, hey, you know, something looks cool or something looks awesome or something like that. It's just like cool, that's fine. But just like as I continue to watch more of this game in general, like I'm seeing like a bunch of new pals for the first time right now because like, yeah, like I said, I've only been watching very, very sporadically. Like that Yormintide saying that thing's starting to grow on me a little bit. I just saw that Relaxosaurus thing, and that is one derpy looking dinosaur as far as I know. Yeah, and then I think there's that little electric creature that you showed me earlier that looks like it has the Raichu tail, right? So it's like, I mean,
Sparkit.
Yeah.
It's actually called Sparkit.
Sparkit. Okay, so see now I can kind of see. I mean, like, okay, that's one similarity. It's got like the Raichu tail. Oh, cool. I mean, you give a rat an electric thunderbolt tail, I don't think it automatically assumes that, oh look, this is a total big copy of Raichu or something. Yeah, it's kind of hard to put my input on here because I do only watch it like every then. But like, the game itself looks pretty interesting, looks fun. Me personally, I'm just not into the whole like arc survival type of gameplay. Like, I feel like that's too much for my brain, which is odd to say, honestly. But because I like games like Fire Emblem and stuff, and like you can kind of, I mean, while you're not like literally base building, there's a lot of thinking involved sometimes. And correct me if I'm wrong, this game is still in early access. It's not the published finalized game, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's in its beta stage.
Oh, okay. Well, dang. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, if they have to make some changes to how some pals look, then sure, by all means. I don't see any reason for them to actually get like copyright strikes for this. Like, I'm sure there's like a lot more worse cases, but that could possibly pop up for them to be able to take some kind of legal action.
Yeah.
And I saw that panda thing you had earlier. That thing also had yellow on it. The one I saw before was the one with the grass.
Yeah, the grass is the normal. This is the electric version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of the pals have a couple flavors to them, and you can only get them by breeding them with a type that matches. So I take the grass dino, if there's this very specific electric pal I can pair it with, and I'll get this guy instead.
That's what I like about Palworld is when you're playing through Palworld and you get to the deserty area, there's a level 50 Anubis boss, and that's the only, if I'm correct in saying that, and I think I could be, but I could also be very wrong. That's the only place where you can encounter Anubis in the wild. He's level 50, and obviously if you're a new player and you're just looking for resources or whatever, you can't actually get him, and he's quite a decent one for your base. But at level 19, you can breed 2 pals to get Anubis early on. Oh, 47, not 50. Sorry, that was my mistake. I really like the breeding in Palworld, because obviously if you breed 2 of the same pals, you get the same pal, but you can mix and match and get different pals that you might not be able to find in the wild. For example, there's a specific legendary pal that you can only get through breeding, sort of like a secret pal type thing.
One of the nice things about Palworld is early in the game, they go through a tutorial of, hey, this is what you need to do to make a pal sphere. This is what you need to do to make a base. Like this thing right here, there's a tech tree that goes along with this. And as you level up, you gain access to new things. And at level 2, which you get very quickly, you start accessing bases. And you get 1 base. But as you complete milestones for the base, your base level will increase, which allows you to put more pals in your base and eventually max out the number of bases to 3. And I have 3 bases set up at resource locations specifically for farming for endgame stuff. The nice thing is that you can place a base almost anywhere in this game. There are certain limitations, and of course all of your base items have hit points, and it requires materials. Like, a lot of people are like, well, this is just basically Pokemon with stuff. No, this is more like Minecraft with Pokemon. Because the very first thing that you do in Minecraft is punch a tree to make tools. Very first thing you do in Palworld is punch a tree to get tools. So like, here I have an axe, which you can make with wood and stone. Stone you can just pick up or punch. And then I can go over to trees, start chopping down trees to get wood. Then I can start using, once I'm high enough level, I can start creating foundation and walls made out of wood to make my sanctuary, my safe place to sleep at. You need to have a roof over your head so the beds would work. But I think one of the nicer aspects of Palworld that Pokemon doesn't have, which is a big, huge differentiating factor, is that in your bases, you can set stuff up, like planting for food. And the pals, as long as they've got the skills attached to them, will go ahead and will help you with those tools, and they're more efficient than you are. So, for example, food. The pals have to constantly eat. So I set up this cooking pot to make some type of food. I can sit here and I can start cooking. But I have this pal here that comes in and helps me out, and he will cook this much faster than I will. Refrigerator. Here's my refrigerator. And it, obviously things are kept longer when things are cold. But this refrigerator doesn't work by itself. It requires a pal with the ice cooling ability, which this one does. Happens to be nocturnal, so he's up day and night cooling, as opposed to if I got a pal that's only awake during the daytime, only available at nighttime. During the day-night cycle, they will go to sleep. But this guy's constantly here.
That doesn't sleep at all, even if he's nocturnal.
He's constantly awake. He only goes over here to feed and then come back. Same thing with the Prim Noct. It's nocturnal, so it's awake day and night, and I can have access to cooking at any time, which is important because some of the foods take forever.
I had Vietnam flashbacks to trying to make cake.
Oh, cake, yeah. The nice thing about this game is that they will give you extra bonus XP for the first 10 that you catch, and hatching them counts for that first 10.
That was also one thing I was sad that wasn't in Scarlet and Violet, because obviously in Legends Arceus, you also got bonuses for catching multiple Pokemon of the same species. Or, well, rewards, if I'm remembering it correctly. So it would be cool if they introduced something like that back in.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is that each PAL has a very specific set of skills that they have as far as passives go. So planting, handiwork, lumbering, medicine, and the higher the level, the better they're at. But this is also affected by the star level, which is up here on the top left corner. And the more stars that they have, the more efficient they are at doing it, even if they're only at level 1. And then you have your passive skills, which you mentioned Anubis before. He's great at handiwork, which means building, decent at transport, and really good at mining. And so the passive skills that I was able to breed down into him were skills that increase work speed. But there's also stuff that's called sanity. They have to eat to survive. They have to be healthy, or they start hurting themselves. They'll get injured at work, they'll be fatigued, they'll be depressed. There's a whole lot of underlying mechanics to this game that is absolutely wild.
I will say all of these together that you've just mentioned actually does pretty well in making the world itself feel alive.
You can actually catch the boss. The bosses are huge. That's how you know that you're fighting a boss. They get hungry, They start starving, they will start to feel bad, and the better quality food that you can start making, the better off then. It's there's so many underlying mechanics to this game. It's ridiculous.
So, as someone who hasn't played the game yet, so I can't have a base full of just Depressos or something and just have them do everything. I can't do something like that.
No, because Depressos specific to certain tasks. You can have a base full of Depressos, but that only means that you're going to be limited in what you can do there.
I feel do need to preface something. I will say this game, from what I can see, isn't geared towards kids.
No.
So this is definitely geared towards an older audience, a more mature audience. Although I wouldn't say we're very mature, but
the thing is that all the pals in this base were a low level when I put them in here, and you can see some of them are saying 39. You just standing in the base, them completing tasks gives them experience. And the longer they're doing those tasks, the more experience they'll gain. Even if it's only 2 points at a time, early levels, that basically means you can put, level 1 pals in here and they'll be high level in no time on their own. You don't have to, it doesn't feel as grindy for that. This game has a lot of things that really sells it for me. It's not without its bugs. There's issues with pathing where the pals will run on paths and I leave the front door open because they wind up outside of my defensive wall. They'll get stuck there, they'll start starving because they can't get back in. How they got out, I don't know. Clipping issues. Sometimes building, because of how the building works, pals will get stuck, will not know where to go. So there's issues with hitboxes in this game. And if I threw in like the big Yormantide boss, it wouldn't be able to move outside of this location here. It won't go up the stairs or anything. So the hitbox issues are problematic. There's the clipping issues, and you can get into base raids. Like your base can get attacked by the AI. And it's not the smartest, and sometimes they come a bit too frequently. And worse, if you're not prepared, you'll get swarmed by high-level stuff that shouldn't really be coming after you, and they will wreck your base. I had a complete base wipe in my first playthrough, and you can see where some of the pals are having tripping. You know, they'll stop for a second and trip, and try and figure out where they're supposed to go to get assigned to jobs. The other thing is that I can assign pals to specific locations, but if they are too close together, I'll assign here if they'll register there, and they'll mess me up. So then I have to go chasing them down.
So I think that issue is most prevalent with the workbenches and the assembly lines. Because I mean, even if you're looking directly at the workbench, to assign pals to a task, you basically pick them up and you just throw them at it. So even if you're looking directly at it, so if your hitboxes are overlapping, it'll take the outermost one. So if you're trying to assign a pal to craft spheres at a workbench, and you've got a medicine table next to it, the medicine table might be slightly forward and it ends up trying to make medicine that you've queued up, or it doesn't have the skill and it says no work available.
Or worse, I mean, it was a recent bug, but I think they've gotten that one fixed, where I'll walk into the zone, throw a pal in, and it's like, oh, I got nothing available here, even though it's the only thing there. The other issue that I have with this game is that I can advance time, if it's nighttime, into daytime by sleeping. And the caveat to that on a server is that everyone on the server must be sleeping. You can't have one person out of bed or it won't let you. But if I advance time by 8 hours by sleeping, nothing else is advanced in time. So the eggs will still take 1 hour real time to hatch, even though I went to sleep and technically, 8 hours of game time has passed. So that's kind of like another nitpick of this game that I have. And there's stuff that they don't tell you, and you kind of have to figure out on your own. Like the medicines aren't properly labeled. So sometimes you're sitting there like, well, what do I do? Because this medicine doesn't say that it covers this particular problem. So what am I supposed to do now? How do I fix this pal? And you just have to have all the 3 medicines on you and bring the pal into your team and figure out which is the one that lights him up to cure him. Because you can only cure ones that light up when you select that specific medicine. And of course, there's, where you're kind of gear-based as well, and repairing is so expensive. It gets grindy whenever you start getting the high-level stuff, and you're playing by yourself.
I will tell you what annoys me. Okay, so the real-world timer I don't think is an issue, because that's a staple of survival games. It's the same thing in Ark, but there is no pal that you can put into a farm to get high-quality pal oil. That's one thing that irks me, because then I just go and I know live a whole lot of dig toys or the derpy mud one.
The other thing is the environmental stuff. You go to the mountains, it gets cold. You need cold. You go into this desert, it's going to get hot, and you start taking damage over time. So like little things like that really kind of make this game really solid, I think. It's those little things that really sell it. But this is also those little things that really come to mind when I say this isn't a Pokemon ripoff. This is more of a Minecraft ripoff with Pokemon aspects.
Draco, I think there you need to be just a tad careful comparing it to Minecraft. I know obviously you've given your points about how it is similar, but I think it's a bit further from Minecraft. It's more like Ark.
I've actually never played Ark, so I don't have a frame
Have
of
you
reference
never?
for that. No. That said, there's so much that this game has in common with. So much so that Microsoft jumped in on those with them. Like Microsoft has basically said, we're going to back you guys up. What do you need? Like they're hosting servers for Palworld on Microsoft just because this game has such potential.
Moving on, I think this game has potential to put pressure on the Pokemon company to sort of step up their game a bit. Obviously not create an Ark meet Pokemon type survival game, or maybe that could make for an interesting spin-off, but actually just get them to focus more on developing their games and, you know, adding more story, making the world feel full, and just avoiding the bugs that were rampant throughout, for example, Scarlet and Violet. As of recent years, Pokemon games haven't really lived up to what they used to be, or maybe that's just because a few of us have gotten older and they don't really hit like they used to. That could also be a factor, but I obviously want to see more effort being put in, and Palworld becomes a generational thing.
And that's leading us to the next part of this conversation, which is, you know, this game did something that no other creature collecting game has done when it comes to referencing Pokemon, which is it outsold everything within launch window. I don't think even Pokemon has had a launch that was as successful as Palworld was, and it did not go unnoticed. But that being said, with all of the little nuances that this game brings to the table, part of me, and you touched base on this before, but part of me hopes that the Pokemon Company pays attention and sees the potential of having more connection with the pals. Because you know what? I'm going to always go after Anubis and Verdash because they're so helpful to me. They're not in my party, but I rely on them. There's a strong connection for me and these particular pals. Whereas when I'm playing Pokemon, I'm catching something because it's a specific type, but then once I don't need it anymore, I chuck it to the side. It's no longer useful to me.
Yeah, and this is the thing I also like about Palworld. Obviously, apart from the world being made to feel more alive than any other monster tamer out there, you also get pal skills. So if you've got a pal in your party, you can throw it out and you can ride it, or for example, there's a small pal called Lifmunk, and that's a very good pal. You'd think, oh, maybe it is a bit weak, but Lifmunk's pal skill is it gets a little Uzi. So when you call it to you, it can actually sit on your head, and then if you're shooting, or even if you're just waving like a pickaxe in the air, aiming at an enemy, it will shoot your enemy. So it's a really powerful mon, despite being very small. So each pal can actually be used at any stage of the game. It just depends on pal skill, whether you've brought its star level up, its normal level, you've bred it to have combat skills or base skills.
And I mean, there's some that are utilitarian.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Like
didn't
this
know
guy
that.
right here, a cat helper. This guy, when he's in your party, he doesn't even have to be out. He just has to be in your party. Will increase your carry capacity by 50 points, which early game is huge.
If you have 5 of those, that increases your weight by 250, which might not sound like a lot, but it is actually a significant amount.
Okay, so that's one of the things you brought up too about like the whole Microsoft and stuff, asking if these guys needed help with anything, or like your opinion on like hoping that the Pokemon Company takes a look and maybe like takes some pointers or something. That was another thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, was like longevity of this. Like I said, like if I tried to play this game, it probably wouldn't, depending how long, maybe a good, let's say a week at most, I'll probably play about as long as that. And after that, like if there's like nothing else I'm interested in or nothing new comes up, you stop playing. So like what do you guys think about the longevity of this? Like I know this is still in early access, so maybe they'll probably add some more stuff, but do you think it will actually last pretty long? Or
Well, that's the thing. So there is a minute amount of story in here. Obviously, because it's early access, there's some areas you can't access yet. So there might be more story added. But as to the longevity of the game, I think it will last very long. If you look at something like Ark, so there was Ark Survival Evolved, and then there was basically an enhanced version of it called Ark Survival Ascended that they decided to do while people wait for Ark 2. So they basically sold the same game twice, and people are still playing that, people are still enjoying it. So I think when it comes to survival games, if you're into that, then survival games can last you a very long time. If it's not really your cup of tea, you might play it, capture all the pals, defeat all the bosses, and then just put it down until more content gets added, and then pick it up again, play it for a couple of days, finish all of that content, and then put it down. So I think it's very much up to the person and the kind of games that they enjoy.
that sounds like a fair point too, though, because it's like what everybody does with a normal Pokemon game too, I think, right? Like Unless you
Yeah.
play competitively or something, it's like, oh, okay, well, this part of the DLC is done. I guess I'll wait for the next part. Oh, this update's done. I guess that's it.
Yeah, so that's one thing I also like about survival games is you can adjust the settings. So obviously there's preset settings like normal or easy, normal, and hard. But then you've also got customized where you can create your own settings. So you could have, for example, let's say the egg timer. So instead of waiting 4 hours for a huge egg, because I think that's what it is, you can bring the egg hatching time down to you only have to wait 15 minutes for a huge egg. Then you can also do like EXP rate, how much damage a pal does to you, how much damage you do to a wild pal.
Food will adjust, change some of that too. Anything that you make, for the most part, might have a component for crafting or for battle damage. Like it's wild how interesting this game gets, and even outside of just the customizable points.
So what I also like about this game is obviously not every pal in the game is available in the wild. So you also get dungeons where you can find specific boss pals. So I think the Egyptian cat, but its ice variant you can find in the ice biome. And then you've got boss specific like dungeon-y type arenas where it's just the boss. You don't have to go and fight through others to get to the end boss room. I think that's a nice touch as well.
The breeding on this is so much harder than it is on Pokemon, but at the same time allows you to really customize the pals to whatever you want by being able to pass passive skills from one pal to another. And one of the things is like, I can breed that dragon with something else and get a totally different pal.
That's also another thing that is quite cool. So you can catch a legendary pal, of which Jet Dragon is one of the 5 legendary pals you can get in the game. And you can breed it with any other pal, and the legendaries specifically have a trait called Legend, and you can breed that onto any other pal you want. You just need to find the right combination. The same with Lucky Pals. You can breed the Lucky trait down, even if the offspring pal isn't considered a Lucky Pal, which is this game's version of Shinies.
So there's no way to like increase like the level of their whatever they can do, like the mining and stuff. You can't increase those levels at all. It's just like the abilities that you can pass around instead.
Correct.
No, those are set values.
But that's one of the big things about this game is that you can pretty much find anything anywhere if you just happen to look and get lucky.
Yeah, so in my experience, Lucky Pals actually show up at a fairly decent rate.
Between the controversy, the gameplay, the hopes, again, that this could maybe set in motion some better quality stuff from Game Freak, if they decide to take it seriously. But for all we know, they're just kind of blowing smoke because they know there's not really much they could do against Palworld. The numbers don't lie. I mean, 20 million within 7 days is absolutely massive as far as games go. Not to mention the concurrent players on servers for that first month.
Steam alone averages 1 million concurrent players per day.
There's a lot to be said about what Palworld brings to the table as far as game innovation goes. Well, not so much as innovation, but bringing together aspects that make this game appealing and stand out on its own. Controversy aside. And like you said, they did announce this back in 2001, and even then you saw some of the pals and you could easily see, oh, that looks like this Pokemon, this looks like that Pokemon. And if Nintendo didn't do something then when they had ample opportunity to say, hold up a second, the fact that they waited this long now, it's kind of, I think you hit the nail on the head, was just like, let's just put something out there, otherwise we're going to be inundated in people telling us about, hey, Palworld's infringing on this, and Palworld's infringing on that. But I think at the end of the day, I think we're seeing the birth of a new franchise that's going to hold its own against Pokemon.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, where Palworld itself goes, if this is going to be like a one-time game, or it might become a generational thing.
I can see them expanding the current world in an update of some sort. This is a pretty big game to begin with, and there's a lot of potential areas where they can expand. It's just that they haven't done it because this game is still in beta. There's still a lot of wiggle room that they are allowed to have. It's just it hasn't come into full connection just yet, because again, we are in beta stage. There's a roadmap that they've talked about, more pals, more utilization of things, skills. They're already making huge plans. They're looking to hire more people to join their team to help push this game even further, because these are the same guys that built Craftopia.
I suppose the only thing we can do is wait and see what happens. Just enjoy the game.
And with that brings our episode to a close. Let us know what you think about Palworld, what the controversies, the games that, as we shut it off, the potential that this game may have either on its own or maybe sparking something with Game Freak. Let us know down below. Also, be sure to share, like, and subscribe. Let us know how we're doing. And as always, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
Harold.